Hello and welcome to CWTA, a series where I present facts and my opinions about a particular topic. And today's topic? Well, ain't you just glad you asked? She's Daddy's precious little girl. She hates cherry pits as much as she hates her brother. She's a firebending prodigy that was born lucky. And according to a reliable source, she's a 400-foot tall purple platypus bear with pink horns and silver wings. So, can we talk about Princess Azula? Wait, hold on. Before we talk about Azula, I just want to let you guys know that from here on out, this will be spoiler territory. Which means that if you're not familiar with Azula or the world of Avatar The Last Airbender, then you will be heavily spoiled. Other than that, let's get to know our fiery Fire Nation princess. Princess Azula is the daughter of Fire Lord Ozai and Ursa, and the younger sister of Zuko. She was 14 years old throughout her entire appearance in the show, and she was born in 85 AG. AG means after Air Nation genocide, which isn't really kid-friendly. She always craved the attention and love that her mother gave to Zuko. She tried desperately to grab her mother's attention, but in the worst ways possible, creating an even wider rift between her and the mother and son duo. Azula was initially assigned to capture her uncle Iroh and her older brother Zuko after they defected from the Fire Nation. Instead, she ended up taking Omashu and Ba Sing Se, and nearly putting an end to Avatar Aang's life. Talk about efficient, because this girl is extremely efficient. Azula is responsible for two monumental moments in the show. Her knowledge of the invasion of the Fire Nation during a solar eclipse ended up saving Fire Lord Ozai from being captured by the gang. She contributed a huge deal to Zuko's defection once again from the Fire Nation after she suggested to their father to use Sozin's comet to decimate the Earth Kingdom to show their power. Azula has a huge part in both the Search and the Smoke and Shadow comics. In the Search comics, Azula was able to get information out of Ozai regarding letters that her mother sent years ago. She then stole from Rafa and Misu, siblings in Forgetful Valley waiting for the mother faces, a wish that could have granted Rafa a new face, for a wish to know where their mother was. When she found out, she took the opportunity to try and kill their mother, but was instead thwarted when Ursa apologized for not loving her enough. In the Smoke and Shadow comics, Azula realized that her destiny was to shape Zuko into her ideal Fire Lord. A Fire Lord that's as ruthless as her. She tried doing so by kidnapping children and plotting chaos, which honestly I think we could have done without the kidnapping children part. In the end, however, she believes that she has won, since she was able to force Zuko to rule aggressively in the amount of time that this all happened. Now that we've covered the facts, let's turn our attention to the fun facts, which, no offense to Azula, but I think it's a quality that she doesn't have.
She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
Azula actually technically makes an appearance in every episode intro, as she is the firebender seen when Katara mentions fire as part of the four elements. She is the only one so far seen with blue fire. She is also one of the few people in the Last Airbender series that can direct and redirect lightning, along with her uncle Iroh and her older brother Zuko. Azula has symptoms of schizophrenia. Her most notable symptoms are paranoia, thinking an assassin could have killed her due to the Dai Li being late, or choking on a cherry pit, hallucination of her mother and conversation with her, and hostility. Gee, I wonder, Azula being hostile? I never heard of that. She's actually very hostile. Azula's fighting style is that of the, for the sake of not butchering it, here's the word. And it's also a Chinese martial art. It focuses on graceful and aerobatic movements. This can be seen from her aerobatic kicks, wide extension of limbs, and strong offense. Funnily enough, there's a Fire Nation drink called Azula's Lightning. This one-of-a-kind drink can be found from the Avatar The Last Airbender, the official cookbook, recipes from the Four Nations. Oh, hey, what's up? Yeah, pretty cool party, huh? I mean, I'm not really one for parties, but I guess it's cool. Oh yeah, the guy? Yeah, the guy who hosted this, I kind of know him. He's a dude named Chan. And we actually met a few years back. We went on this camping trip. I mean, we went on a few trips actually, but yeah, I mean, there were a few trips that were memorable. There was this one trip that I specifically remember, clear as day, like it happened yesterday, right? So it was like, what, our fifth time going to the woods? And basically, out of nowhere, we were both scared because we heard this weird sound. It sounded like... It kind of sounded like that. Yeah, it kind of sounded like that. That noise right there, it kind of sounded like that, exactly. Oh, but wait. You know this song? Oh, bro, you're gonna love this song, right? So basically, this song is really good. It's about a girl named Azula who always lies and just...
Azula always
Damn,
lies.
bro,
Yeah,
like,
Azula
this is a
always
really
lies.
good
Yeah,
song.
Azula
Yeah.
always lies. Yeah, Azula always lies.
Woo! Woo! All right, we are back. I'm back for a meeting. Actually, it may have been a party. I do not remember. It may have been a party or a meeting. But what I do remember is that this is the opinion section of the video. And this is where I talk about things that personally interest me about the character Princess Azula. My first point is, why Azula over Zuko? Well, it's pretty interesting to note that Azula has had a pretty much interesting character arc as well. Azula's endgame wasn't given the extremes that Zuko and Ozai were dealt with. Zuko started up as a villain, but ended as a hero, whereas Ozai stayed a villain throughout the entire show. Interestingly enough, what ended up happening to Azula was that she was stuck in between Zuko and Ozai. I believe that where she is now, she could probably end up like Zuko, redeeming herself and becoming better. Or she could end up as Ozai, becoming worse and just doing a lot of horrible things in general. Another interesting way to look at it is that Azula is the other side of the same coin that Zuko is on. On Azula's side, we get to see that Ozai loves her, or at least acknowledges her. Whereas for Zuko, well, Ozai doesn't give 2 cents about him. One more way of looking at it is that this is Azula, and this is Zuko. So at the start of the show, this is exactly where they were. Azula is highly praised, well respected and feared in the Fire Nation, whereas Zuko right here is looked down upon by virtually everyone in the Fire Nation except maybe his uncle Iroh. As the show progresses, we clearly see a change in that dynamic, where Azula starts to lose her grip and starts to end up on the shorter end of the stick, whereas Zuko slowly climbs his way to the top and eventually becomes Fire Lord. Now this is what makes Azula interesting, is because we get to see sort of like a what if into Zuko's alternative life. What if Zuko was actually loved by his father and not much by his mother and his uncle Iroh? And what if Azula was actually loved by Uncle Iroh and her mother but not their father? In my opinion, that's what sets them apart and makes them interesting in their own ways, is that their differences kind of really do define them. Now my next point are the 3 main things that sort of caused Azula's mental breakdown. First and foremost are of course Mei and Ty Lee on the episode of the Boiling Rock. And this is the episode that I feel like marked the breaking point of Azula that started all of it. Because at this point, Mei and Ty Lee, who are 2 people that Azula are so sure of that will never betray her, actually ended up betraying her for the greater good. Now, Azula isn't exactly the type of person to cherish her friends for who they are. She likes her friends because she puts them in line through fear. Though, of course, I'd like to believe that Mei and Ty Lee didn't just do this in the spur of the moment. Because looking at their childhood, Azula isn't exactly the type of normal kid that would bond normally with kids her age that other kids would do. She already started ruling with an iron fist and a sense of fear. I think at that young age, it kind of let Mei and Ty Lee know that maybe it's a good idea to steer clear away from this person. The second breaking point is when Ozai rejected her offer for her to come along during Sozin's Comet. Azula was not really used to getting no for an answer, especially by her father, because as long as she did everything right the way that her father wanted, she would expect normally that he wouldn't say no to her. So in one of the few monumental moments in her father's life and in hers, she just kind of wanted to share that moment with him, but unfortunately he had other plans. Azula initially thought that her father actually was capable of love, and actually loved her for who she was. But I guess it goes to show that Ozai actually only cared about himself and the power that he was gonna get for Sozin's Comet. His huge ego got in the way and he wanted to cherish that moment by himself, and didn't even see his daughter as an equal, or maybe even his own daughter at that point. And finally, the last straw that broke the camel's back, quite literally, is Zuko beating her at an Agni Kai. Props to Zuko for beating her, but we already knew that before that fight, Azula was already facing some very troubling hallucinations. She was already unstable before the Agni Kai, but there is no denying that the Agni Kai itself was probably what sealed the deal. And the reason I say that is because at the end of the Agni Kai, well, she kinda went cuckoo. But in all seriousness though, the reason why Zuko beating her Agni Kai damaged her a lot was because she and Ozai looked down at him for a very long time in their lives. This was the same person that she thought would never be able to beat her at anything, because she is, as we recall, a firebending prodigy and was born lucky.
Easy!
For her mind, I'd like to believe that Zuko was probably the weakest person that she's ever met, and being beaten by the weakest person while you think you're the strongest is pretty damaging to the ego. Now my next point is of course a very interesting little debate. How strong was Azula, and could she have beaten Ozai, Iroh, and Zuko? First up with Ozai, we have to remember that the creators themselves have stated that Ozai was the most powerful firebender at his time of reign. This means that if Ozai and Azula were ever to get into an Agni Kai, we'd know for sure that for now, Ozai would win. But of course there are the arguments that what if Azula was sane? What if Azula had enough time to practice and master her craft? What if Azula had some sort of tactical advantage? Well, of course, Azula would win. But seeing as how things are right now, we still have to sadly give the points for Ozai. Now for Iroh. Now again, current Azula versus current Iroh right now, I think would be a very hot debate. And what I'm about to say might probably put me in the hot seat. But I do think that Azula has the capabilities to put Iroh to a stalemate. And the reason I say this is because, again, Iroh might be experienced. Iroh is a fantastic, incredible firebender and definitely has more experience than Azula. But in Iroh's old age, he can only do so much physically, and in a fight, physicality is a huge factor. Azula is still young and somewhat within her prime. She's a very skilled combatant, and her mind for deception, strategy, and firebending is nothing to laugh at. Now for the last one, Zuko versus Azula. Technically, we do have an answer for that. However, what if Azula was sane during the fight? We have to remember that a mentally unstable Azula was able to hold her own against a Zuko that was already technically a firebending prodigy because he had already learned firebending from the dragons themselves. Now I think that this is a very interesting fight, one that a lot of people will have a debate in. I think it's safe to bet that even if we pit Zuko against a sane Azula, the result would probably end up being a stalemate too. Fortunately, of course, there's still time for that fight, as Azula and Zuko are still very important characters in the world of Avatar. And my last and final point... oh boy, this is gonna be very spicy. Is Azula worthy of a redemption arc like Zuko? Now, of course, straight off the bat, my opinion is yes. But at the same time, maybe not. Now, the reason why I said yes and no is because yes, she does have the potential for a redemption arc. And the reason I said no is because we have to remember that in order for her to have a redemption arc, we have to evaluate how good is a redemption versus what she's done in the past. Now, let's start off with the no part, which is the redemption arc itself and what she's done in the past. I feel like the perfect comparison for her redemption arc would probably be Uncle Iroh. Wait. Now, before you put me on a cross and try to burn me for my opinion, hear me out. We have to remember that Iroh is a decorated war general from the Fire Nation. This means that he's probably done a lot of killing in his time and most likely also violated a few of the Geneva Conventions, if it does exist in the Avatar world. Now, of course, not only that, but Iroh also led a siege at Ba Sing Se. We know that Iroh failed miserably and lost his son Liu Tang. Now, of course, it begs the question, what if General Iroh won that siege at Ba Sing Se? That would of course mean that his son would still be alive and he wouldn't have any sort of guilty conscience on his hands. Getting further into that, that means that he would take a lot of prisoners and probably kill people who would try to retaliate. Now add that possibility to every other thing he's done in the past, because this is a 100-year war we're talking about. He's definitely done a lot of atrocious crimes in his time. Now that we've locked that into memory, let me ask you a question. Would Uncle Iroh still be worthy of a redemption? Or would the fans even forgive him for the things he's done? Now, I'm not saying that Uncle Iroh isn't an iconic character. Of course he is, and of course he's done a lot of good things for him and Zuko and everyone else. Now that brings us back to Azula. Azula has done a lot of terrible things. Would we still forgive her? Would we still give her a chance for a redemption arc? Because we have to remember, she's probably got a lot of people killed. Not just from the enemy side, but also at the Fire Nation side. Because this is the same person who agrees with their father. The very same father who was very much okay with sacrificing Fire Nation soldiers just to win a war. Lastly, my yes point. Why would I say yes to a possibility that Azula can be redeemed? Now, the reasons why I would say yes to a redemption arc is because 1, she's still a child. 2, is because she's still got a lot of years ahead in her life. And 3, because she is still Ursa's daughter. And to be fair, Ursa might not be the nicest person in the world, but she is considerably nice. Azula has so much potential in herself, not just for firebending, for other things, for even changing herself for the better and committing herself to doing better things with her life. Though of course, Azula's redemption arc has to be leagues different from Zuko. Azula's redemption arc has to take more time. It has to feel very natural. And we have to see a lot of inner conflict in her. Because Azula as a person has to remember that she's done a lot of terrible things. Will people be able to forgive her for what she's done? And we're not talking of us. We're talking of the people she's affected in the Avatar world. Will the widows, the orphans, and the many other family members of the people she's gotten killed, accidentally or on purpose, be able to forgive her? Because at the end of the day, this is something that we all have to remember for a redemption arc. It's how serious the past atrocities were done. Can it be easily forgiven? Will it take a lifetime? Is it even forgivable in this lifetime? And of course, with all that said and done, we have to remember that Azula has a lot to learn. She has a lot to learn to change herself for the better. And of course, to prove to people that she is doing her best to outgrow Ozai's influence on her. Because Ozai's influence on her and Zuko was pretty strong. We have to remember that, again, I've said this many times, she's still a child. And as traumatizing as it can be, these kind of things just don't go over easily. But I myself am very excited for the potential future of Azula. Maybe she'll be able to redeem herself, maybe halfway, or maybe not at all. Whether or not she can redeem herself, well, I'm still hoping that she can. What matters at the end of the day is that she still remains to be a character that people can be invested into. I'm thankful for Grey Delisle, all the creators and writers that have made Azula into an icon. And it goes without being said that we as the fandom, as much as we love Azula, there's no defending her past crimes. Love the character, but not her crimes. But that's it for now. And remember, it's never too late to keep talking about and form opinions about Princess Azula. Hope you guys enjoyed the last episode, for now, of